All right. Thank you to everyone joining us for tonight's program, Stories from the Archives, School Days in Peters Township. The information compiled for this program comes from original photos and documents that have been donated to the PTPL Archives. The more information we have, the more accurate our presentations can be. So we always welcome new donations of original photos or documents related to Peters Township from any time period. So you can please contact Margaret if you feel you might have materials of interest. I'd like to thank the Peters Township Library Foundation for generously supporting the archives. The foundation's mission is to provide fundraising and volunteer support to the library, and one project that they choose to fund is the archives. Supplies, technology, equipment, and the fee for an archival consultant are all covered by the foundation. If you would like to support the archives and support programs like these, you can always visit the library's website and click the red donate button, and then specify in the notes field that you would like that donation to go towards the archives. On the screen here, you can see some photos of current archives work. We have a display located on the second floor of the library, pictured on the left, that was created by Margaret and library staff member Stephanie Schultz that correlates to tonight's program. I would encourage anyone local to Peters Township to stop by and check it out. The display will be up through February, and it contains some pretty cool things about the history of education in Peters Township, like a student registry from 1898, a 1925 graduation diploma, monthly teachers reports from 1902, as well as many other historic photos and items related to the schools. A new archival project we are exploring for next year is the digitization of the 77 Peters Township yearbooks that we have in our possession at the library. We've actually uploaded 2 samples to PA Photos and Documents, the 1944 Planet and the 1945 Crest, which is before it was called the Ember. So anybody can access those 2 editions of the yearbooks through ptlib.org/yearbooks. Carrie, would you mind dropping that in the chat for me? So once these yearbooks are scanned and uploaded, anyone with an internet connection can access them. They're text searchable, so you can search for people's names or locations or teachers or whatever you would like. So moving forward, we have determined that it would be best to outsource this project. Digitization projects can be quite pricey, but they're well worth the cost to be able to provide open access to these materials. If anyone is interested in helping to support this project in 2024, you can reach out to myself or Margaret. We were really happy last year to have an anonymous donor partially fund our newspaper digitization project, which those 3 newspapers are also available on PA Photos and Documents. Another way you could support the project is to help us fill in the gaps in our collection. We are currently missing 1 single year of Peters Township yearbooks. So if you have a 1961 Ember that you would be willing to permanently donate to the library and to the archives, I cannot express enough of our gratitude to help us solidify our collection. We have 1 that's on loan so that we can digitize it, but we do have to give it back to the owner after that. So please reach out if you have a 1961 Ember. We would appreciate it. So at this point, I would like to turn it over to our presenters tonight, Margaret Deitzer, our local history librarian, and Carrie Weaver, our PR and marketing coordinator. They have done a fantastic job of researching and putting together this slideshow. So I will turn it over to Margaret to get us started.
Welcome, everyone, including our donors, our friends from our Stories from the Archives programs, and those guests tonight who are new to Stories from the Archives. It is both a privilege and an honor to share with you the priceless historical photographs and other materials housed in our archives. This evening's presentation focuses on what is in the library archival collections. Thank you to our amazing donors who we will acknowledge later in this program. Our plan this evening is to proceed through our slides in a chronological order with a few exceptions. We know subscription schools operated in Peters Township in the early 1800s, with the first school on the Samuel Blackmore farm, a school on Brush Run, and another school on the Ward farm. However, our presentation this evening will, for the most part, talk about education in Peters Township following the township's adoption of the 1834 Free Schools Act. This act created a system of state-regulated common school districts throughout Pennsylvania. So we look at a couple images here. On the left, as part of that 1834 Free School Act, the township received appropriations from the state. On the left, you are looking at an actual receipt for $1,518. That was the state's appropriation to Peters Township, September 1897. On the right, that is a priceless catalog of children of school age in Peters Township, 1898. Again, a catalog of those children. Here's the information provided: date of birth, age, sex, nationality, residence, the school district, name of parent or person in parental relation, post office address, the name of the child's employer if the child was under 16. So, to summarize, in 1898, we know the students living in Peters Township, so therefore we know the families, because most of these families had children. And when I say we know the district they lived in, is because with the passage of that act and the appropriations to the township was required to form school districts. And later, Carrie will be talking about that. But there you can know where they lived in the township and what school district they were in. So this is pretty awesome information for persons that want to conduct information, not only about the schools, but about Peters Township. Next slide, please. So before Peters Township established a high school in 1902, some students attended the Jefferson Academy in Canonsburg to further their education following their attendance at one of the common schools in the township. Lizzie Heminger was one of the students who attended Jefferson Academy, where she selected courses preparing for a career in teaching. So on the right, there's a teacher recommendation letter from 1896 written by Mr. R.H. Malloy, the principal of the Jefferson Academy. In his recommendation letter, he states, "In the classroom, Lizzie was always prepared, and the universal report of her teaching was very flattering to her. And I believe she possesses the qualities of a good teacher." 1896, her letter of recommendation. Next slide. On the left, Lizzie Heminger accepted a teaching position in Peters Township at the Wright School. Our archives includes her written report from 1897. This report describes the end of year activities and mentions she received $233.75. That was her wages for 1897. On the right, from another collection in our archives. So that document on the right is a Peters Township record of expenses, including an October 1898 entry, $35 paid to Lizzie. Next slide.
In 1840, there were only 4 schools in Peters Township: Bauer School, Callahan, Denison, and Townsend. Over the years, many petitions were sent to the school board requesting more and better schools for children in the area. By the early 1900s, there were 11 common schools in the township, the precursor to today's public schools. Our research discovered various names for these schools, but many of them you will recognize: Wright School, Turkeyfoot School, Thompsonville School, etc. Let's uncover a few of these common schools using the resources that were donated to the archives. Next slide. In the early 1900s, the one-room schoolhouse era, the emphasis was on morals and citizenship, with attention to reading, writing, and what they called figuring or arithmetic. The population in Peters Township at that time was around 1,500 people. This slide shows several photos that were generously donated to the archives about some of those common schools. The first school built after the adoption of the Free School Act in 1834 that Margaret mentioned was on the road from Johnson's Farm to Bower Hill, known as the Bowers House. The photo on the top left from 1914 shows the students from that school with their teacher, Sadie Heminger. Sadie was the sister of Lizzie Heminger, also an early teacher in the school district. The next two photos on the top row show the Hackett School. One teacher and one with a teacher and students, and the other one with a teacher, Rose Telbaum. This small mining community was founded in 1835 and is located between Venetia and Finleyville on Venetia Road. The school was eventually purchased by John Telbaum of Hackett and turned into a dwelling house in 1927. On the bottom left is Turkeyfoot School, which was located at the intersection of Churchill and Turkeyfoot Roads. This school was closed in 1932. Next, we see the students and the teachers from the Wright School, built in 1856 on the farm of Edward Wright. An early narrative about the school shared that the teachers' wages in 1840 were $15 per month with board for male teachers and $9 per month with board for females. By 1857, it was agreed that men and women's teacher salaries should be equal, and their pay was increased to $24 a month. The school was closed in 1931, and the school and property was sold in 1932. The school had held reunions of former students and teachers in 1922, 27, and 32, some of these with over 500 people in attendance. Margaret and I joked that this was the party school of the township. And last is Venetia School, which was replaced by the large two-story brick building you can drive by today on Venetia Road. Next, Margaret will share some details about Venetia School, and we will share more details about a few of these other common schools. Next slide, please.
All right, Carrie concluded there with the Venetia one-room school. Now let's take a look at this new Venetia School. It's no longer the one-room school, but multi-rooms. This Venetia School was established in 1929. It was remodeled in 1950 and again in 1956. On the right, we have another end-of-the-year report submitted. This one was submitted June 1st, 1939 by the faculty of the Venetia School to the Peters Township School Board. If I may read a couple of sentences. Gentlemen, the day of the visiting school board member seems to have passed out with the rapid changes that have taken place in education during the past decades. We regret in a way their passing, yet realize that all are busy and are willing to entrust the affairs of the school to those employed by the district for that purpose. This is not to be considered a finished research article or a complete report, but merely a compilation of the most important and easily interpreted facts of school life. We sincerely hope the results justify the effort it has taken to put this material in readable form. Respectfully, the faculty of the Venetia School. Couple of facts from the report. This report includes enrollment statistics, attendance records, talking about 1930 here, honor roll, failures, growth charts, and results of standardized tests. Another comment from the report. 2 7th graders, 1 boy and 1 girl, dropped out of school with domestic employment certificates. Only 2 new pupils came into the district during this year. Both are wards of the juvenile court and are tuition pupils. Next slide.
Let's talk about Thompsonville School. The photograph of Thompsonville School on the far left was built in 1857 near Camp Lane. This little one-room school was used for 50 years until 1907. The photograph in the middle is of students taken outside of Thompsonville School with their teacher. The large photo shows the new Thompsonville School, dedicated in November 1907, with a group of students in the yard in front. This brick building accommodated students here until 1914, when it became so crowded that the first and second graders were moved to a room in the nearby Thompsonville School. Students at this school did their patriotic duty during World War I, collecting peach pits to create charcoal filters in gas masks, and they also organized a Junior Red Cross League. This school also had frequent reunions that were attended by hundreds. The building is still standing today, and many of you may recognize it as a local restaurant. Next slide.
You are looking at the Pleasant Valley School. The photograph of the Pleasant Valley School shows the school that was built in 1893. It replaced the Callahan House, which was one of the first 4 schoolhouses built following passage of the 1834 Free School Act. The building still exists along East McMurray Road as a veterinary clinic. On the right, this 1920s photo shows the students with their teacher, Miss Esther Baird, who also attended the Pleasant Valley School as a student. The archives includes a personal narrative called Brief History of the First Pleasant Valley School, written by Baird in November 1964. From her narrative, the school district selected Miss Nellie Hayes of Shippensburg as its initial teacher. She would become everything to every child in her care: doctor, nurse, counselor, recreation director, as well as their teacher. Baird also described that during the last week of the school year, there was a gala community affair when the parents brought well-filled baskets for the noon dinner. Next slide. So now we're looking at the new Pleasant Valley School. Some of you may even remember attending the new Pleasant Valley School. The large photo shows the school while under construction in 1963-1964. This modern school consisted of 3 wings and 25 classrooms. Top right. To provide space to hold the elementary classes until the completion of the new school, an addition was built at the northern end of Donaldson's Crossroads in 1963. This newspaper clipping shows Miss Sharpneck's class of 3rd graders in their classroom. By January 1964, eight of the projected 18 classes moved into the new Pleasant Valley School, while the remaining classes stayed at the center unit at the Crossroads until more of the classrooms could be built. In the photo on the lower right, students being served a hot lunch in their new Pleasant Valley School. Next slide.
Now let's talk about McMurray School, built in 1895 on one of the McMurray family farms located on Thomas Road. That's the school in the photo on the left. A March 1900 report commented 31 students enrolled with an average attendance of 28. Another photo on the top right shows the school in the background while young girls in the foreground play with their dolls. This photo from 1911 in the bottom shows students with their teacher, Sadie Heminger. Next slide. What you see now is a souvenir book. It's an example of a souvenir book that a teacher would have given to her students at the end of the school year. A few souvenir books, commencement announcements, and dedication programs donated to the archives are available to view online at PA Photos and Documents. This booklet was from McMurray School from the 1905-06 school year and includes the student names and Sadie Heminger as their teacher. On the front cover, this sweet little poem says, "When study and school are over, how jolly it is to be free, away in the fields of clover, the honey sweet haunts of the bee. Away in the worlds to ramble, where merrily all day long, the birds in the bush and bramble are filling the summer with song." Now, let's take a look at this photo on the far right. It's very exciting. We're so excited to have this into the Peters Township Archives. It shows the actual interior of the McMurray School. The glass plate with this image was donated to the archives by Mrs. Jean McMurray Hutchinson. This is the only photo we have ever come across that shows the interior of one of the common schools. So you can see the large blackboard there, the bench on the front there for recitation, looks like a banner or a flag in the center of the photo there. So this is quite remarkable that we have this documented in our archives.
So I think you can all see why we often call Jean McMurray Hutchinson the heart of the Peters Township Library Archives. Next slide. At the turn of the century, there was no high school yet in Peters Township. So high school classes were conducted at the normal school at Bower Hill during the summers. However, this instruction did not lead to a degree. The above announcement states, the Bower Hill Normal School will begin May 3rd, 2 grades, one for those in the advanced classes of the public schools, the other for teachers. Next slide. The beginning of the Peters Township High School. The desire for better educational facilities in Peters Township, which had only been partially satisfied by the summer school conducted at Bower Hill and the Jefferson Academy of Canonsburg, brought about the establishment of the Peters Township High School in the autumn of 1902. This was nearly 70 years after the establishment of the common schools in Peters Township. Next slide. Did we miss a slide here?
No, I think you wanted to go back to the other slide.
Okay,
Margaret.
okay, go back, sorry.
There you go.
Okay, yes, my apologies. The new school was housed in a dwelling owned by Harvey McMurray, located on Valley Brook Road between East McMurray and Bebop Road. The school opened with 29 students, including 2 girls, Emily Matthews and Mary Patterson, who were completing their final year of their high school education that they had begun elsewhere. At the end of 1903, both girls graduated and went on to attend college. A description from a Peters Township publication about this first school, and I quote this. During the first 2 years of its existence, the schoolhouse was housed in a dwelling owned by H. McMurray, located about 1/2 mile from McMurray's mill. The school furniture consisted merely of enough plain kitchen chairs to seat the pupils and a large table which served as the teacher's desk. Half-day sessions only were held, the students reciting continuously during the day. Home study was the observed rule. No transportation was furnished by the district, but sheds were provided where students who rode to school might shelter their horses. Attendance was exceptionally good, in spite of the fact some of the students had long distances to travel and roads were bad. Most of the students walked from 1 to 4 miles. Some rode horseback, and a few traveled in buggies. Many interesting stories might be told of the upset cart, the trouser-clad horse, and the interruption of classes to disentangle Prince from his harness. In 1902, the high school course consisted 3 years, following closely the curriculum outlined by the state. So they stayed in this dwelling 1902 and 1903. Next slide. Our archives includes the publication Teachers Monthly Report. It is currently on display on the second floor. This report includes H.J. Cooter's school-related entries from 1902 to 1910. Mr. Cooter was the only teacher in the high school for over 10 years, 1902 to 1913. The entries in the monthly report include class records such as enrollment, attendance, textbooks used, individual students' performance notes, graduation records, school visits, scheduled holidays, and other information. There were several annotated remarks throughout the pages. An example, 2 students were listed as having omitted Latin from their courses. They did not receive their diplomas. Next slide.
Now we're at Peters Township High School in the 1900s. The photo on the left shows the building constructed specifically for Peters Township High School students. The 2-room frame structure was used from 1904 until 1929. The new school was located at the intersection of Bebout and Valley Brook Roads near the underpass, where the roundabout is now open. Note the proximity to the Montour Railroad lines located to the left of the school at the crest of that small hill. We learned from a resource in the archives. In 1904, the school moved to the new frame building. The 2 rooms of this building with the folding doors between them afforded opportunities for enlarged school activities. Tables for students were provided, a flag was raised with appropriate exercises, and a community literary society was organized. No longer could young men call at the back door to try and make dates with the girls because there was no back door. The Daily Notes from 1905 headline, "The high school has done good work. That of Peters Township has passed the experimental state and is successful." On the top right is a photograph of all the teachers from 1914 in the Peters Township High School, just the Peters Township school system, not the high school, the school, so all the schools. The first Peters Township High School principal, H.S. Cooter, is seen at the top right. On the far right, you can see the actual Peters Township High School commencement program from April 28, 1905. This was the first class to complete the 3-year course in Peters Township High School. In 1914, half-day sessions were discontinued and class schedules were designed for a full day. In 1921, it was decided that 4 years instead of 3 years of high school were necessary to complete the courses required for graduation. Next slide, please.
This diploma, donated to Peters Township Public Library following a meeting with members of the Dubs family at the Hackett Educational and Entertaining Slovenian Club earlier this year. This diploma was awarded to Anna Margaret Dubs of Hackett upon her graduation from Peters Township High School in 1925. So you can take a little break here and look at this diploma. Please respond with your answer if you find something just a bit unusual with the words in this diploma.
If you see anything that strikes you, go ahead and type what you think are what we've noticed in the chat window. Okay, let's go to the next slide. You people are smart.
There they have their answer.
The certificate misspells Peters as the possessive. Peters with an apostrophe. So that's quite a striking glare for a high school diploma. Okay, next slide. Now we visit Peters Township High School in the 20s. These photos showed from the archives show on the top left the entire student body of the high school from 1922, and the graduating class from 1922 is in the bottom left photo. Quite a handsome group. The large photo on the right from 1929 captures the entire student body outside of the high school. This was the last group of students to attend that school, as big changes were in store for the school district. Next slide. Around this time, there was a new movement in the country to centralize rural schools. The one-room schoolhouse would be combined into large, modern buildings to reduce overcrowding, lower costs, and improve the quality of education that children were receiving. In 1920, the PA State Department of Education hired Dr. Lee Driver with the task of centralizing the rural schools in Pennsylvania, as he had done so with brilliant results in the state of Indiana. During this time, he met with school boards and families throughout Washington County to discuss the feasibility of centralizing schools in their districts. By February 1921, the board adopted a resolution in favor of 11 schools in Peters Township to be centralized, with plans for a modern school building to be erected for the total enrollment of about 370 boys and girls. Well, like anything else these days, this resolution was not accepted wholeheartedly by everyone in the township. 4 residents filed a complaint against the school board opposing the plan to spend $60,000 to acquire land and erect a new large school building. The proposed location was to be 1/2 mile from the present high school, which was 1 mile from McMurray, which would be 1 mile from McMurray and 3 miles from Venetia, part of the C.W. Townsend Farm at the intersection of Townsend and Bower Hill roads. The road was not a main thoroughfare, and it was totally unimproved. And it would not be a good location because 45% of the students at that time who attended school were in Venetia and Hackett, so it would be a tremendous burden for them to come that distance. Later that month, the county court dissolved the injunction, and the school board was permitted to proceed with plans for a new school building. The school directors declared it is in the best interest of said district and the ultimate advantage and benefit of all taxpayers and citizens that the proposed building be erected and the schools of the district be centralized at as early a date as possible. Well, there was no further action taken on centralization until April 1926, when the first steps to centralize the schools took place, when ground was broken for a new 8-room schoolhouse, the Venetia grade school. The Venetia and the Hackett 1-room schoolhouses would be abandoned, and the first grade school commencement was held at that Venetia grade school in May of the following year. All gave it the highest praise as being one of the finest buildings in this part of Pennsylvania. Shortly thereafter, another huge project would begin to further centralize the Peters Township School District. Next slide, please.
Continuing the move toward centralization. No sooner were classes ended for the 1929 school year, the Peters Township School Board began their plans for a new Peters Township High School with 8 rooms and a combined auditorium and gymnasium for grades 7 through 12 for an estimated cost of $60,000. This would be the 3rd Peters Township High School. As you recall, the first was in the dwelling located on Valley Brook Road, 1902, 1903. Then that second was opened in 1904, and that 2-room structure on Valley Brook and Beebot Roads near the new roundabout. And up above, that is the 3rd Peters Township High School, newly opened. In the start of the Depression, this third high school was built at the site of the current intermediate unit, which was formerly of the Peters Township Middle School. This new school officially opened in January 1930. The new red brick structure provided a 4-year high school education with agriculture a formal topic of study. Enrollment was 115 students, 65 of the high school age, and the remaining 50 are 7th and 8th grade students. The official dedication for the school was in April 1930. The featured address that evening was delivered by none other than Dr. Lee Driver, the champion on centralization of the rural schools. Over 400 people attended the dedication exercises, with scores of alumni returning for the festivities. The publication on the left is the dedication program for the new school. This publication includes the names of graduates of classes 1903 through 1929. There were no graduates for the classes of 1917, 1920, and 1921. So this is the photo of the exterior of the new high school that is in that program. Next slide. Here you see more photos from the dedication book. The large photo on the left shows the entire student body, the first group of students to attend the new Peters Township High School. The photo on the top right shows the new auditorium and gymnasium. The gymnasium was reported to be one of the best in the county, with a floor especially fitted for basketball. Boys and girls basketball teams were very popular sports at that time. Both the boys and girls teams traveled together to play teams from other area schools, but most of the Peters Township games were played at home due to these new excellent facilities. The bottom right photograph shows the state-of-the-art art science laboratory in the new school. Next slide, please.
So the centralization project continues. Look how much has changed from the original 11 common schools and high school building. The large modern high school was opened in 1930. The new Venetia School that Margaret discussed had opened in 1927, and Pleasant Valley School was still open. 2 more of the common schools would close in the 30s, McMurray School in 1932 and Thompsonville School in 1938. Enrollment at the high school in September 1931 was 103 compared to the 77 of the previous school term. The school now housed students from grades 1 through 12. Next slide.
Now we visit Peters Township High School in the 1940s, which will include the war years of World War II. The photo on the left of the Peters Township High School during this time period. The photo on the right is the Peters Township High School class of 1940, poised on a vehicle outside of the school. In April 1942, over 200 persons attended a defense meeting at the high school, at which incendiary bombs and gas masks were demonstrated by the chief air warden of Allegheny County. Sugar rationing began in June 1942, where every man, woman, and child had to register for a canning sugar ration book, which was carried out in the elementary and in the high schools in the county. In August 1944, a dedication of the honor roll to the men and women of Peters Township who were serving their country. Erection of this tablet would take place at the Peters Township High School. Next slide. On the left is a 1945 diploma for Robert Chapman, who had already enlisted in the armed forces. On the right is the 1945 commencement program, and below the commencement program, is a prom invitation at the George Washington Hotel in Washington, PA, May 1945. An oral history participant, Boyd Caldwell Roach, also graduated from Peters Township High School in 1945. Here are a few comments from his interview about attending Peters Township High School during the war years. Senior year. Practically all 4 years, your teachers were gone, already in somewhere. Like our senior year, we took turns going into the recruiting office. It's surprising how many of those that were killed in World War II lived in Peters Township. I think there were 11. Next slide.
While Harry Truman battled Thomas Dewey for the presidency, another important question would be on the November 1948 ballot in Peters Township. Anticipating that the building of a new school would be necessary, the Peters Township School Board purchased an additional 6 acres adjoining the present school property at McMurray. Residents and taxpayers were to meet at the Township High School to discuss the proposed bond issue for school expansion. Tentative plans and the architect's drawing of the proposed structure were to be shown at that meeting. Well, Truman was elected. The new 4-lane Route 19 from Donaldson's Crossroads to Pittsburgh was scheduled to open, and typifying the progressiveness of the Peters Township residents, the proposal for a bond issue for school expansion carried in the township by a vote of 628 to 391. The new grade school building near the present high school under construction will be ready for occupancy in January 1950. Pupils in grades 1 to 6 will be moved into that new building. The new grade school was open to the public for inspection during the Farm Fair in August 1950. Dedication ceremonies for the building were held the evening the fair opened. Next slide.
These are some photos from the interior of the new McMurray grade school that Carrie just discussed, the one built in 1950. Left, the McMurray Lions Club assumed the responsibility of equipping a health room for the school. This large photograph shows the dentist, Dr. O'Connell, and Maggie Mathot, the school nurse, with a student in the dental chair. Around that same time, the University of Pittsburgh received a $148,000 grant from the National Foundation for Infantile Paralysis. Dr. Jonas Salk was appointed head of the research and later developed a vaccine that was distributed to children in the United States, Canada, and Finland beginning in 1954. In April 1955, Peters Township parents were sent permission forms to have their children inoculated with polio vaccine, which was free for the 1st and 2nd graders. The 2 photographs on the right shows the McMurray school cafeteria. The one on the top, if you can see from wherever you're watching, actually shows the glass bottles, the children going through line to pick up their bottles of milk and then go on to pick up their other lunch on their trays. The bottom photo shows the teachers and the students eating lunch together in their new school cafeteria. Next slide.
By the 1950s, centralization of the schools had gone even further. By that date, there were only 3 schools remaining in the school district. The Peters Township High School built in 1930, the McMurray Grade School completed in 1950, and Venetia School established in 1929. Grades 1 to 6 would attend McMurray Grade School and Venetia School. All other grades 7 and up would be attending classes in the Peters Township High School building. Next slide. A mere 5 years later, in April 1955, a proposed 24-room addition to the high school building was approved by the county school board. An estimated $745,000. The addition would include classrooms, a gymnasium, library, industrial art shops, 2 music rooms, facilities for hot lunches, an administrative suite, including a health room. In this photo at the top, the future Peters Township High School, you can see the pen drawing showing the huge addition that would be placed to the right of the current high school, the red brick older high school, and the addition would be to the right. By May of 1956, Peters Township is experiencing the biggest building boom in history. And what comes with more homes? More students in the schools. Next slide. A year after the county school board approved the plans for the addition to the high school, no bids were awarded. This was due to a huge debate being waged in the township, centering on a complaint that the grounds were not large enough for this proposed addition. At the start of the school year in 1956, there were 1,239 students enrolled in the district, 152 more students that were enrolled the year before. The photo on the right shows the 1957 edition that actually did take place, and the caption of the article reads, "New $1 million Peters Township High School edition will open its doors September 4th, 1957. In October of that year, a library was opened for Peters Township residents in the school building. Staffed by the Women's Club of Peters Township, it was the precursor of the library we are in today. Next slide. And now for some more Peters Township drama. In May 8th, 1958, the Peters Township News reported that the Peters Township Board of Education had purchased a 20-acre plot for a 3rd elementary school, one of the best kept secrets in township history. Apparently, the purchase was a big secret to eliminate the possibility that the owner of the property might hike the purchase price if they knew the identity of the purchaser, since the purchasing was being accomplished by a third party. The 20-acre lot cost $38,000. Elm Grove School was open to students in January 1960 to relieve overcrowding at the Peters Township grade school and would accommodate 310 students from that school. It was a 15-room, 1-story structure with 10 classrooms for grades 1st through 6. Next slide.
And now we can take a look at the Peters Township High School Student Handbook from 1961 to 1962. This handbook included general information for students, such as the daily schedule, attendance policy, employment certificates, grading, parking facilities, and other topics. Personal appearance was also addressed in the student handbook. The dress code for boys. Levi's and dungarees, not permitted. Radical haircuts, not permitted. The dress code for girls. Girls are not permitted to wear slacks, Levi's, jeans, or Bermuda shorts at any time. This handbook also included, there were several pages of cheers, including this cheer to support the basketball team. Hello there. How do you do? The Peters Indians welcome you. With a dribble to the left and a basket to the right, the Peters Indians say hi. Next slide. In the spring of 1960, a team of educators visited Peters Township High School and recorded a favorable reaction to the school's educational program. In the fall, their report was submitted to the Middle States Association of Secondary Schools and Colleges. The Middle States Association, in turn, granted official accreditation to the school. The impact of this accreditation was significant because it allowed students to apply to the college of their choice. John Opeka, a well-known resident of Peters Township and a participant in the library's oral history project, addressed the accreditation issue in his transcript. According to his transcript, community members began advocating for accreditation for the Peters Township School District. There was concern related to college admissions limitations for students graduating from an unaccredited school. Following the hiring of Dr. Ed Reichard, the new Peters Township school superintendent in 1959, Mr. Opeka arranged to meet with the new superintendent. In John Opeka's words, "I made myself acquainted with him, and I asked him one question. Are you going to consider accreditation of the schools?" He, Dr. Reichart, responded, "John, that's first on the agenda. If not the first, it will be one of my priorities." This was a huge achievement for the future of the students of Peters Township and deserves a huge cheer for this accomplishment. Next slide. With centralization well underway, the district is faced with a new challenge: consolidation. In this memo to the citizens of Peters Township from the Peters Township School Board, dated January 7th, 1963. In that memo, Peters Township School Board alerted the citizens of the township to the consolidation issue. In 1961, the Pennsylvania State Legislature introduced a bill to consolidate what was then 1,500 school districts in Pennsylvania. In the late 1950s, early 1960s, the Department of Education in Harrisburg was promoting mergers so that districts would become bigger districts, but fewer. Each county was to come up with a plan of reorganization to be submitted to the Pennsylvania State Council of Education. At that time, Peters did not meet the standard to remain its own school district with a required minimum of 2,500 students. They did have 2,100 students and growth projections of meeting 2,500 soon. The original plan was to align Peters with the Greenville School District, which was Monongahela, Donora, Finleyville, and those areas. Another option included a merger with the Upper St. Clair School District. According to Dr. Howard Jack, superintendent of Peters Township Schools at that time, in Dr. Jack's words, "We were slated to go together with Cannon McMillan or Ringgold, or in one scenario, Upper St. Clair." Dr. Jack further stated, in 1993, Reed Day, Peters Township School District solicitor, was the one who successfully waged the battle to keep Peters Township an independent school district rather than going into a merger. So thank you, Dr. Jack, thank you, Reed Day, and all those who advocated for Peters Township to remain its own school district. Next slide.
Peters Township High School, 1961. A mere 4 years after the $1 million addition to the high school in 1957, the State Department of Public Instruction approved bids totaling $370,000 for construction of another addition to Peters Township High School. This would be the third addition to that school. The new construction would include additional classrooms for the high school, kitchen and dining room to serve both the high school and McMurray grade school. The present space between the high school and McMurray grade school is where the new addition would be constructed. The headline from the News Progress announces the project in the April 27, 1961 edition. The public got their first look at this new addition at an open house in November of 1961. By February 1962, the addition was complete, and many community organizations used this dining room for space for their meetings. Next slide. But wait, even before the new wing for the high school to connect with McMurray Grade School was completed, the school board began discussion to purchase the J. Elmer Johnson Farm for future buildings. The 90-acre tract was purchased in late 1961. Part of the property was used for the new elementary school, Pleasant Valley, and part for a new senior high school, hopefully on the site by late 1964 or early 1965. Well, that was wishful thinking. No sooner did the sale close than in 1963, Consolidated Coal announced their intention to mine the Pittsburgh seam of coal beneath that site. The decision was made to monitor the subsidence on the site as the coal was mined and not begin construction until the land had settled. Another situation occurred when an outcropping was observed, and that prevented mining on the property to continue. When construction resumed, methane gas was detected leaking from the mine, and the coal seam was sealed so construction could proceed, preventing mining on that part of the property. And yet, another issue occurred. The school ended up with less building, costing more money because the decision to heat the school with gas required increasing the cost to design the new school building. Finally, the photo on the right shows the groundbreaking ceremony for the Peters Township High School, the last day of December 31st, 1966. Left to right, we see John McClure, Chairman, Peters Township High School Authority, Mrs. George Tina Wagner, President of the Parent-Teacher Association, Lisa Miller, President of the sophomore class, Robert W. McMurray, President of the Board of School Directors, and Dr. Howard Jack, Superintendent of the schools. On the right, on the lower photo, Dr. Howard Jack in 1967 at the high school construction site, showing that to students. Next photo. Next slide.
Hey, there's several photos from the dedication program for the new high school. Of course, it was not all smooth sailing to complete the construction. During the construction, Brandon Construction filed for bankruptcy. According to Reed Day's transcript, Pittsburgh National Bank, the lender, proposed placing a levy on Brandon's property at the construction site. Before this action could be taken, Reed Day, the township solicitor, arranged for stickers labeled property of the Peters Township School Authority that were to be placed on every piece of lumber, every wheelbarrow, every piece of steel, everything in sight. Next step, the school district put the workers on the school district payroll until the United States Fidelity and Guarantee Company, the bonding company, could hire another contractor. Soon they did, and the Gendo Construction Company completed the building. The building was first occupied September 16th, 1968, although not formally dedicated until September 21st, 1969, a whole year later.
So from 1835 through 1969, we have taken you on a trip of 134 years of education in Peters Township. Margaret and I have compiled our information through the archives and other sources, but let's hear from our special guests for tonight, two people who actually lived through some of these events. Next slide, please.
Please notice the yearbook photos of our two guests this evening. And remember Lacey's earlier comments, the yearbook project is something that the library will be undertaking. For a return appearance in our Stories of the Archive programs, we welcome Tom McMurray. He is a lifelong resident and he graduated from Peters Township High School with the class of 1968. Tom is president of the Peters Township School Board. Both his father and great-grandfather served on the Peters Township School Board. His grandfather served on the Peters Township School Authority.
Our next guest is also a lifelong resident of Peters Township, so we welcome Toni Sulkowski. She attended several of the elementary schools we discussed tonight and later became a teacher at some of those very same schools. As a principal, she took part in the construction of what we now know as McMurray Elementary School and Bower Hill School, and she finished her career with Peters as Peters Township Director of Technology for the entire school district. So welcome to both of you. We're so glad you could join us. Toni, do you want to put your screen on so we could see how you look just like your high school yearbook photo? There you go.
I know,
You
looking
look-
at the glasses.
You look just the same. I think the glasses are the same too.
Hey, I want to extend my welcome to both of you, to Toni and Tom. Thank you for being part of our celebration tonight. Thank you. Or as Carrie said, the party library. Yes.
So what can you tell us about growing up in these schools and the changes and the shuttling here and there and the construction? Were you even aware of all this as a student?
Well, I didn't really come onto the student scene until 1959, when I entered first grade at the McMurray school that you showed that was being built. And I understand that prior to that, the McMurray school was actually located in the basement of that junior senior high school prior to moving over there. As you and Margaret were talking, things kind of popped into my head. One of them was the fact that McMurray was located downstairs first in that big building. The second was when you mentioned about World War II and so many of our students serving. There used to be a memorial actually on that property.
Yep.
And when they raised everything and tore it down and built what was to become the middle school, a new middle school, because it had sunk into the ground because of mine subsidence. Something happened to that and nobody was taking any ownership for that. I don't know, maybe Tom can shed light on that later on, but that memorial kind of disappeared. I was laughing about Margaret reading with the handbook that girls were not permitted to have slacks and wear slacks to school. And I remember being a student at that high school that was being built, that opened in 1968. And later on in the 70s, we protested the fact that we weren't allowed to wear them. And my father encouraged me to wear my slacks to school and to protest, which was kind of a big thing in those days. So we got that overturned real quickly.
Oh gosh.
So that was kind of nice. You also, the one article mentioned that Don Roach was hired as the music teacher. I saw Don is alive and well, still living, and he's in his 90s, and he lives here in Peters Township. So he sometimes comes to our retiree luncheons that we have. And his sister Doris actually was hired and taught first grade for years and years and years at that McMurray school. And she passed away a few years ago. And when Pleasant Valley was built, and I was a student there, that was, I believe that building was all electric. And that was a big thing for that school. And the running joke with that among the kids was, what has three wings and doesn't fly? And that was Pleasant Valley, of course, because all those things were wings. I do remember when Pleasant Valley was built, they did take and added that addition down at the crossroads, and they broke up our attendance areas on that side of the township, the crossroads side. And what they did was they took us by whole classrooms and shifted us off. So like in my neighborhood there on Grandview Drive, some of the kids went to the McMurray school. Some of the kids went to Elm Grove School. Some of the kids went to the Crossroads. And I was in a class that went to Venetia School for a half a year. So in that fall of 1963, while they were building the school, we were all in different areas. And then when that's at the end of 63, what they did is they gave us all big shopping bags from the grocery store, and they handed them out. We had to put our books and crayons and pencils. I was a fifth grader, put all that stuff in there. And then we had to take it home on the bus. And so we kept it there over Christmas break. And then when they opened the school and we went back in January, we had to put everything back in the bags and then take the bags and go into the school. And I remember getting off the bus and passing the multipurpose gym area, which was still a dirt floor. The school wasn't even really done when some of us moved in there. And so I went with my whole homeroom, is my point. Like on the bus, when the bus picked us up in the morning, it went to all the homes where everybody in my homeroom and a fourth grade homeroom were. And then we traveled all the way to Venetia, which was a 45-minute bus ride, which was not fun in the wintertime. And we were horrible on the bus. And I think we must have gone through like 15 bus drivers. So I still, in my heart to this day, I always felt sorry for the bus drivers. So as principal, I made sure I took care of all of them because I knew what we put them through as a kid. So I do remember that about Pleasant Valley. And I do remember that the McMurray Elementary School, because I spent a lot of time there. I was there in grades 1 through 4. I remember the cafeteria and that they made the food there and it was really good. It was home cooking. It was really, really good. Spaghetti was excellent. I do remember that. Also, when the district was expanding, they actually moved part of the junior high over into that McMurray building after they built Pleasant Valley, because that eased some of the population. So the whole top floor of McMurray became part of the 7th grade. We were housed in there. And they took us as a grade level and divided us into 9 sections at that time. And we were organized by ability grouping. I can't even imagine doing that with kids today. So the high achievers were in like grade 7, section 9, and then they divided it off all the way to 71. I do remember there was a little home out there on the edge of the property, the home economics building, where we went and we took sewing and cooking, and the boys had metal shop and wood shop. So I do remember those aspects. We had a big playground there that we played on that was asphalt. It was a great little school. And to be able to go back there and teach there as a teacher later on, before they closed it, was really interesting. And then they turned it into the district administration offices. So for those of you who are current residents, may not know that that's where the McMurray Elementary School was. When I became director of technology, my office, it was downstairs in the corner, which happened to be the 1st grade room where I attended 1st grade.
Oh my goodness.
So I started out as a 6-year-old and ended up a 57-year-old in the same room in the district. So I knew it was kind of time to leave and retire. I went full circle. But I did have the pleasure of attending Venetia, and for that half a year, we didn't really mix with each other's populations very much. We just didn't have that kind of time. I do remember that the water in the fountains had a sulfur taste to it. And so we had to bring our own water from home, and that was in a thermos because they didn't have like bottled water back then. I do remember the district putting televisions in the rooms, black and white TVs, and we watched WQED and the science programs. And I have to say, all through my schooling in the township, and I was all the way up into that high school that was being constructed that you talked about at the end, they were very, very progressive. We took field trips in 5th grade. I went to Gettysburg. We went to the young people's concerts downtown in Pittsburgh. We went to the zoo. We went to the museums. We had a challenging curriculum. They had enrichment classes for kids. They had support classes for students who needed that at the time. We had, I found my report cards, and we had report cards that we got every 6 weeks. And we had reading, spelling, writing, math. We got graded in music. We got graded in behavior. We got graded in our work habits. They listed all the books that we read, the textbooks for reading, and whether we accomplished them or not, as well as our attendance. So I can't say enough for the opportunities that I had curriculum wise. And I think you reflected that in your talk and showing how the district was growing.
Yep.
And that's why Reed Day and Howard Jack wanted to preserve the school district intact. And I do remember that, a little bit of the talk of that battle going on. And of course, I do remember the high school being delayed a couple of weeks because of the problem with the construction company, and we couldn't get in there into the building, so we had to wait. And then, as fate would have it, I was a sophomore at the time when we entered that building, and I had to have spinal fusion surgery. So after 2 weeks of being there at the end of September, I left and had to go into the hospital and go through all this stuff. But while I was in there, the Kiwanis and Peters made a deal with the school district, and they paid for telephone jacks to be placed in the various classrooms, so that when I came back out of the hospital and came home, and I had to be in bed for a year, so I couldn't go back physically into the building, there was a little box at home that went into the telephone jack that they put in our living room, because I lived in the living room that year. And then there's a box at the school, and the kids who were in my classes would carry the box from wherever my next class was, and they plug it into that phone jack. And then I could hear everything that was going on in the classroom. It was like an intercom.
Yeah.
I could hear everything. And then when I wanted to participate, I had a little, like, it was almost like a mouse, and I would click the pad, and then the teacher would hear a beep on the other end. And that's how I would participate, or they could call on me at any time.
Wow.
That's really progressive
It
technology.
was, yeah. Yeah.
And also when we were there was a planetarium. They had an outdoor court to eat. It makes me laugh with the new high school that everybody's touting the new outdoor court where the kids are eating. I'm like, okay, we did that in 1968, but whatever. I'm glad they brought it back because they enclosed it over time. And there was an outdoor little courtyard within the library confines as well, which was really neat. You could go outside there and read during your time when you were in the library. And later on, they brought a mainframe kind of hookup with a computer, and we could take a programming class, basic programming, real basic. And we saved it on a little piece of yellow tape at the time, and it went to US Steel, I think, in Pittsburgh. And that's where the data was exchanged. So, and we also were allowed to take classes with W&J. So the district was very forward thinking the whole time. And it was interesting to watch it as a kid, to go to the farm fair and the little carnivals that we had down at the crossroads before it was built. And then to see this change come over with the schools the way it did. And they just maintained the pace, and they hired really good teachers. I can't complain about my teachers at all. You know, a few here and there, but really overall, quality education. So that's, you know, my experiences in a nutshell.
Thanks, Toni. Thank you.
I
So
guess
Tom?
I'll skip over a lot of I started at McMurray Elementary in first grade and graduated in the last class in '68 from the high school. So my education was all in Peters. One of the pictures you showed of the old cafeteria, I can remember being there, and it was a lot smaller. We look forward to when the new school, when it was joined together, and that happened when I was in sixth grade. That combination, or where we went together, and then the cafeteria was open, and we ate dinner or luncheon with the big kids over in the high school as well as us. So it was quite a difference in that, having that all together. That was nice. I think the part that a lot of people remember how the outside of the schools looked when you had the old history part over in the 29 edition, and then you go through the 57 all the way over to the newest one, and then back to the elementary part. But outside, we all remember the playgrounds, and we remember those merry-go-rounds, and the big swing sets were all on top of the asphalt pavement, which was lots of fun with that when that happened. And we had a graduation out in the front, where in between, well, at front where the parking lot, and it was a big field. There was a baseball field out there, and also there was parking lot when they needed it. But a lot of stuff happened there. That's where the farm fair was. Uh, and like I said, the graduation, and pretty much that was the main center of the township. We played ball in the summer. We had Boy Cup games and so on. And when we graduated in '68, I worked for the schools for that summer, moving stuff up to the school when all that was going on. And we uh, carried everything with Ray Gerhold's trailer track and moving that stuff up there. A lot of us worked with that. It was a lot different when Dad was on the board. I remember him going through the issues with Branagh Construction, putting the stickers on, and when they went bankrupt and trying to get it all. I think many of us were jealous that we didn't have a swimming pool in the old school like the new one did. So that was a change. So a couple of things. And Margaret, I did want to show you 61 yearbook. So
The 61.
for you, 61
Oh,
you're looking for.
you mean donating?
Oh yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
Thank you. My
Collection
goodness.
complete.
Thank you. Yeah, it'll be exciting to have those yearbooks because I mean, it's just fascinating going through them. Just even looking at the ads, you know, it's just really good.
Although I
But-
have to say, going through those yearbooks, when I was looking for photos of the exteriors and all the changes in these schools, there were very little pictures of this exterior of the schools. It was all the kids and inside and the plays and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And it made me laugh because it was like, well, they were busy with their friends and their activities and they weren't paying attention to taking pictures of all the changes outside the buildings. So that was fun.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, thank you both for sharing tonight's program with us. And thank you for the donations that you've both given to the archives.
Right.
We're just so proud of the resources in here and just for creating them and learning how to organize them and preserve them and to make them available to the public. And these programs that Carrie and I do, Stories from the Archives, is just one of the ways that we promote what we've received and also gives us an opportunity to thank our donors. We genuinely appreciate the trust that they give in that we will take care, we will preserve these archives. So thank you.
May I jump in 1 minute too?
Sure.
Margaret, you and Carrie have done so much in these archives, and we owe so much to thank you for that, considering where did this stuff all go before? It ended up in a burn pile or just was lost. And now there's a place for it to go, and it's being digitized in the oral history. You two are so commended, as well as the library and the township, for that. So thank you very much.
I just got a call this week from a woman. She was saying she was down in her basement. She wanted to clean her basement out. And I said, oh boy, bring it into the library. We love it.
It is exciting. It is just really exciting. And when people call and say, or some just stop over, but these are their cherished possessions. So again, and thank you.
Yeah, as a school district person, having attended all the schools, 1st through 12th, because we didn't have kindergarten back then. It's just amazing to know that our library is so invested in preserving the history of our school district, because the school district really has no arm for that. And it's just wonderful to know that you have that there and that people can access that. So
Right.
Thank you very much, both of you, for your time and effort. I agree with Tom. Wonderful. I mean, I learned a lot in this presentation tonight, and I thought I knew a lot. So,
Well,
I
we
like
have to
seeing
thank, we have to thank both the library and the financial support that we receive from the Library Foundation.
Lacey, do you want to pull up the next slide, the special thanks? Here we go.
Yeah.
That's what Margaret was just mentioning. Special thanks to you. And also Bridget Kerwin was a tremendous surprise. She came through with a document, a lot of information about the school board notes, and she shared them with us. And we use that resource throughout this presentation to fact check dates and things like that. So that was wonderful. And of course, the foundation and their financial support and encouragement, they do pop their head into the archives to say hello. Margaret, what did you want to say to this group of people?
Oh, well, you know, my thanks. I thank them every single day I'm here. And Tom goes way back to the first, Carrie and I did programs, what, shall we say 18 years ago, Carrie?
Probably. Yeah.
We started, and Tom was right there. He had the, I think a couple of times he served as our master of ceremonies. We are grateful. And then Toni came by lately with the donation of her career, not as her student days, but as her days on the faculty and an administrator. And that just shows such confidence in our library. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Margaret, and I have a special thanks for you tonight.
Is that what these flowers are here for?
Yes, that's what those flowers
Carrie
are for.
delivered those flowers tonight.
So I just wanted to thank Margaret. I met Margaret over 20 years ago. We were both working on the 100th year anniversary. Do you remember that, Margaret, of the high school?
That's how we met each other.
That's how
Yes,
we met
indeed.
each other. And then I
Yes.
eventually got roped into working at the library by Mrs. Lee, and that worked out well. But I have to announce to everybody that Margaret will be leaving her position here at the library at the end of the year. She is going on to other adventures in her life. And I just wanted to say a special thanks to her. It's been a pleasure working with her on these programs, and you know, seeing her develop the archives into what it has turned into for everyone in the community to enjoy. So I just wanted to say thank you, Margaret, and I brought you some flowers to enjoy.
I love them. Thank you. Thank you. It has just been a pleasure, 100% pleasure. So thank you. Do we have another slide with
Yeah, we have a few more slides. These are all the sources, all the family papers that Margaret and I viewed and looked at and read through to document a lot of this information in our program tonight. So you can see how many people have contributed to this, and we're so grateful to them and their families for donating. I mean, you have to come and see these resources in person on display on the second floor of the library. It's just so fascinating to see the paperwork from the 1800s, and we actually have those documents in our collection, and it's just so remarkable. Margaret, what did you have to say?
Well, the transcripts, those transcripts, you can come into the library, you can borrow those transcripts, but you can also listen to them on PA photos and documents. Do we have that slide that you can pull up that shows all our collections, all the things?
Yeah, it's coming up. It's the next,
so
I think it's the last one. Yeah.
Okay, look at that. That is just so powerful. Oh, if you look down there to the second one, all those 20 or 21 transcripts, you can hear them on PA photos and documents, and then you can read the transcripts. But there's our other collections, and we started the yearbook. I think it's in there someplace.
It's the third one down from the top.
Yeah,
that's where all the yearbooks will be located once that project starts going, and they'll be added in that area there.
I know that's going to be a very appreciated resource, because people always are interested in those yearbooks, and if they don't hold on to them, I want to go back. But anyway, just thank you.
And if you don't find something to read on or watch on television some night, those newspapers, those Peters Township newspapers, just pull them up and just thumb through those. It's just amazing information that you can learn from your neighbors and et cetera, from the 50s, 60s, and 70s in those newspapers.
And Lacey mentioned earlier, they were expensive, but we did go the route of getting them outsourced when we got this anonymous gift. So it was the Library Foundation that supported them, and this very generous gift, because outsourcing the digitization is a very expensive process. But these newspapers were quite fragile, so you really didn't have the option of doing it in-house. So we're going to do the yearbooks. We've done a few but we're going to, we've gotten some estimates, and we're planning to move ahead on that project in 2024.
I believe Giving Tuesday's coming up later this month. So, right, Lacey, you wanted to shout out about Giving Tuesday.
Good job. Good plug there.
Giving Tuesday is coming up. So if you want to continue to support, I feel like I'm on WQED. If you want to continue to support the projects and work being done in the library in general and also in the archives. Please remember to donate during Giving Tuesday to the library. Go to our website, drop off a check, however you'd like to donate.
Absolutely.
And I just have one final word to say here. I just want to thank everybody that attends all our behind the scenes programs, all our virtual programs, all our in the library programs, because the fact you support us is so encouraging for us to continue this work. It is you out there that partners with us to allow us to share these resources. So thank you.
Okay. Here's some additional online resources to the library's YouTube channel where you can go back and check out recordings from past Stories from the Archives programs. One about the Dairy Bar, about the history of Route 19, all kinds of topics, and a link to sign up for our newsletter. Okay.
Okay, Margaret, another one's in the books.
I know, but it was just a fun one tonight. So thanks, Carrie.
It was a
It's
great one.
work, but it's a lot of fun.
Thanks everyone for attending. We appreciate it.